Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass. It's about how to develop ethical AI in business, and welcome with me, Ursula Maria Meyer. She is the CEO and founder of Skyform, and she basically sits in Zurich. And for all of you who really want to know a little bit more about Ursula, she is, I'm just like quoting her from her website, she's a computational scientist, engineer, and an award-winning serial entrepreneur. She's fascinated by almost any cutting-edge science and tech topics, and she gained an in-depth education and experience in distributed computing and applied mathematics, as well as interdisciplinary collaboration and leadership across various business domains. Ursula strongly believes that if science and tech is developed with human beings and the environment in mind, it solves a lot of burning issues we face currently as a society. So welcome with me again, Ursula Maria Meyer, an expert in AI, big data, high performance computing, and quantum computing. Welcome, Ursula, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Petra, for this very welcoming introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here and to speak about AI in business and how to develop it ethically, which I think is really very, very important, that it also helps and supports all of us.
Ursula, may I jump in for 1 second? Sorry for that. For all of you, you can raise questions while Ursula is talking. She even asked for that. Or we collect the question and Ursula will answer it afterwards. Sorry, Ursula, now the floor is yours.
No problem. I wanted to say this anyway. So yeah, it's absolutely fine. You can ask me anytime during the presentation. Also, I prefer, it's better if you stay with the presentation. And if it seems that we're getting in a longer discussion, then I think I would just move this to the end, where we also have a Q&A session and can discuss stuff more in depth, if that's okay. Yeah, I'm starting with a really short introduction to AI and also machine learning. So we are all kind of on the same page, because especially in social media, these terms are used in a very often contradictory way. So I think it will help us that we can then start to dive in more into the ethical side. The next point is then why we actually need more ethics in AI. And the biggest part then is how we can operationalize, how we can develop and operationalize ethical AI in business, and also how can we generate return of interest investment, with ethical AI. Sometimes ethics is considered to be some additional overhead, but actually I can show you that most customers would really prefer an ethical solution. And I think actually all these overhead which comes can also be really turned in some in really growth and popularity of an AI solution. So I use AI basically as a generic term referring to all kind of methods which are somehow related to artificial intelligence, like rule-based systems, for example. What we have at the moment is mostly machine learning, which is kind of a part of AI. And deep learning, again, is the next big term which is used very often. This is, again, a sub-part of machine learning and refers to deep neural networks, so meaning really big neural networks, a very specific form of machine learning. The term artificial intelligence has been coined in 1955 by these guys on the right side. There was really no woman present. I checked closely, but later on, of course, there were also women involved in the development of AI. But here, this is John McCarthy. He is the initiator of the study where he used the term artificial intelligence the very first time. And we don't have a precise definition what artificial intelligence is, but actually he provided in the second sentence of his study a description, which I will quickly read to you, and I think it gives quite a nice understanding. So he says that the study on artificial intelligence is suggested under the assumption that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can be in principle be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. So what does this mean? I will translate it for you. So first of all, we need an understanding and a definition of natural intelligence, which we are currently lacking. So we are not very good of understanding what is human or animal or even plant intelligence, if this is existing. And the second part is then that they wanted to develop a mathematical description of this intelligence. This is a classical way a physicist, a scientist work. You look at certain phenomena and then you describe them mathematically. And the second part is that you usually also like to simulate it in a computer. It's usually not the math you can use directly, you develop to describe the problem. You have to still do some additional mathematics such that you can compute it and run it in a computer. So in their understanding, they just wanted to understand intelligence and they wanted to be able to simulate it. So they did not really have the interest to generate a conscious machine or something like this. So it was more a scientific approach. Nowadays, we actually look from two perspectives on it. So some people really believe or hope that we soon have a conscious machine, which we are actually quite far away from. And the other focus is basically on how to apply these methods, which people developed sometimes 20, 30 years ago in business. So we have a much more practical and applied perspective on the situation at the moment. And usually in the business field, we use the so-called narrow AI, which is used for very, very specific tasks. You almost probably know deciding between, so recognizing cats and dogs on images, doing customer segmentation, recognizing cancer types in medical images. But even if you want to recognize a different cancer type, you most probably have to start the training process from scratch. So it's very, very specific what we can learn, what we can use the AI for. And then there is this big interest in so-called strong AI, artificial general intelligence, where we hope that it exhibits some human phenomena of human intelligence, and super artificial intelligence, it even surpasses human intelligence. But as we don't know what human intelligence really is, it's also kind of, all very speculative. So we focus also on the narrow AI part. This is basically what is currently of interest in business. Then we have the next term. This is machine learning. It has been also introduced in the 50s by Arthur Samuel. He's an IBM researcher. You can see here he's playing with a huge IBM computer and they're playing checker. And this was also the first paper which he wrote in 59, where he introduced the term machine learning and his computer learned to play checker with him. Here we have also a definition. This is by Tom Mitchell, which is quite popular. It's also a bit scientific. It will get a bit simpler later on, but it's also not so complicated. So a computer program is said to learn from experience E. So we need some experience, some past experience, which is usually represented in data. This would be here the first block. So this is the experience, the data we have. So we learn from this data, from this experience with respect to some class of tasks T. I just said we usually focus on narrow AI. So usually we have a specific goal to detect a specific cancer in a medical image. This would be then the machine learning model. And now we need also a performance measure so that we see how good the system learns. And this is usually accuracy, or can be also something else. There are several accuracy measures. And if it's supposed to improve if we have more experience So if we put more data inside here, the accuracy should get better. And this is basically the way machine learning uses. So we have a lot of data, we train an algorithm, and then we check how good it is. And if we are happy with the accuracy, then we use it. So now I already come with the big shocker. So actually, machine learning has a huge fields of application, especially due to the case that we have now a lot of cloud access, cheap cloud access. The algorithms have been available already for quite some time. And also it can be applied in various business areas which have not been accessible so far. So there is, on the one hand side, it's a huge success, but on the other hand, if you read Gartner or any other analysts, you will see that still more of 85% of all AI projects fail. And this has several reasons, and one group of reasons are really ethical reasons and ethical issues. And we will look into this today, especially. So, I mean, one reason already mentioned, so softwares are really failing. But it's not only that they're failing, so AI solutions in general are eco-social technical systems. They're not only technical systems, they influence society and they also influence ecology. This is still a very new, let's say, perception that they really need a lot of electricity. So we assume that by 2030, it will be 8 to 20% of the entire world's electricity will go into AI. I actually hope it's possible to reduce that. I'm also raising awareness specifically on that. What is currently more considered and also at least equally, if not more important, are the social aspects. So I just showed you that machine learning learns from data. This data represents human behavior if it's a social system. And then, of course, humans behave in a biased way. So the data is also biased. Usually it's even more biased because it's just a representation, a rough representation of human behavior. And also the AI models can introduce bias. So the AI systems, they propagate and also emphasize even existing bias in society. And since AI systems are then used globally, discrimination can also become more systematic. And this leads actually to that very expensive projects had to be stopped. So Amazon, for example, they tried to develop an internal recruiting tool. And of course, then if they try to recruit for technical roles, there were less women in the past. So these machine learning systems, they only learn from the past. And if in the past certain things happen, then they cannot suggest something else. They just learn from that side. And they could not get it out. It's not that trivial to get certain biases out. Even if you just remove the gender, like the AI system anyway figured out that certain women went to specific women colleges, or they had more women-like hobbies, and then they anyway sorted them out and they only suggested men. And then Amazon stopped it after really several years of development. Other companies are sued for their unethical AI technology. IBM, Facebook, Google, I mean, there are a lot of examples. And it's also like that surveys from PwC, Capgemini, Pega, basically all show that customers are really concerned and that they actually would interact much more with AI systems if they would be more transparent and more ethically sound. But now it's a bit the question, why do we have anyway unethical solutions? So at the moment it is quite easy to sell these solutions. In general, very unscientific. It's not only unethical, a lot of solutions are really also unscientific. So especially in the HR field, I think it's now kind of people are getting aware of it, but in the beginning with HireVue, if you kind of try to deduct from from your facial shape, whether you are successful in a certain job, then this is more a medieval ages theory and less a scientific theory on which the AI is based. So people are in the beginning unaware, and then you can just sell it easily. And of course, there are also no laws and regulations who stop these people. And also, if you want to do an ethical solution, then know-how is usually often missing in companies. And yeah, this kind of really supports the situation. And also from the buyers and user side, there is a very big fear if you ask people why they, so some even buy these things, even they know it doesn't function that well. So in HR, people usually say, yeah, we need help. We have so much effort on sorting CVs that we need help, and we even don't care if it doesn't work. This is my answer, which is given in surveys. And also the fear of missing out. So we have to have this, irrelevant how good it is. And yeah, I think that are a lot of reasons to really consider to introduce a bit of ethics and develop these solutions with society in mind. It's a very short introduction to ethics. It's actually not even so complicated. You don't need to know that much about it. So the term ethics comes from ethos, an ancient Greek word which refers to character or moral values. Here we see already a little problem because, yeah, it's a Western thing, but we see that also other cultures have very similar philosophical theories, and there are some contradictions and conflicts, but in a lot of ways also we think similar in this regard. And we have also a definition here. So ethics involves systematizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong, which concerns matters of value. And value is actually the important point. So if I work with companies, then we usually look at the term value, and we kind of try to introduce a value-based AI solutions, because we all know what values are. We have a feeling for this, so it's kind of an independent phenomena, but we all know what friendship is, for example. We all have a feeling. We also kind of differentiate whether a value is positive for us. We also know what kind of values we would like to live. And this guides us also through our life. And in technology, usually we have a bit of a reduced set of values. I mean, it's usually efficiency and automation. I mean, this is usually our top value we are living. But it would be helpful to integrate more values in technical solutions as well. Convenience and quality is something which is also kind of known. Security is very important, and with more cloud solutions, it's getting more and more important. Also, Steve Jobs with Apple introduced beauty into the technical world. So computers had to look good before they were actually very ugly. So it's another value. And then we have a lot of developer communities. So there is also the community aspect, which we also have with the co-working spaces. So it's also kind of getting a bit of traction. But now we can introduce also further values. We can think of sustainability, accountability, reliability, fairness, privacy. These will be all values I will introduce shortly. And we can even go further. I mean, for a medical solution, it's of course health, trust, friendship, and happiness is considered like to be the highest value overall in philosophy. So we should also make people happy maybe with the solution. And now there are also kind of ethical guidelines which emerged in the last years. They usually, in the meanwhile, we have more than 100. So famous are the EU ethic guidelines. The UNESCO worked on a global guideline. IEEE has a guideline for engineers. And there are also papers which kind of, examine and evaluate all these and compare these guidelines. And we see that they kind of differ, but they share usually a set of values are common in basically all of these guidelines. And I think these are all among the most important values which should be realized. But it's not possible to say, so this is the fixed set of values and this has to be realized all the time. we will see that actually every solution, every AI solution really needs a unique set of values, and you have to rethink this basically for every solution and also specify them for every solution again. So here are the most important 8 key values, which I think more or less are important for many AI solutions. So on the left side, it's basically, so not every value is, as I said, necessary for all solutions, especially for the large scale system. It's kind of important to think about sustainability. Is the data center using renewable energy resources? Are carbon's emission offset? How is the carbon neutrality handled, and so on? So that would be really important to consider for big solutions. If we have only a technical system, like an AI system which controls a wind park, for example, which has no direct impact on human beings, then it's important that it's robust, secure, safe, it's explainable, it's clear who is accountable, who is reliable, and of course, any further laws and regulations in the specific field. And if we have really a system which is which is impacting human beings, like an HR solution, for example, or a credit distribution system, then it's really important that we mitigate bias. We make sure it's fair and inclusive, and also the data privacy laws are considered. Concerning the sustainability, I go a bit more in depth now and explain the issues and solutions to all of these key values. So with sustainability, yeah, I think it's kind of intuitive, clear that very big solutions really need a lot of energy, and then if it's like fossil fuels, then a lot of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases are produced. But it's also the case that in data centers, actually 86% of all the servers are, for example, idle. So they are just there for peak performance times, maybe an hour a day, but they still consume energy. And there are now solutions on the algorithmic side. Several research groups start to develop specific algorithms which actually use small data, which is not only would save energy, but would be also much more democratic, because also smaller companies can more easily work with these solutions. So the sustainability issue is not only for the environment, but also for the people more directly. And there are also data centers are kind of really working on this topic as well. So there are platforms where you can switch AI training jobs between data centers, such they are much more used and not idle almost 90% of their time. And also data centers, they work together with energy companies, or even energy companies like, for example, Vattenfall. They set up data centers and they extract the heat and they put the heat directly in their heat systems and grow algae on top of the data center, which eat the carbon neutrality, which eat the carbon. So there are a lot of really I would say very creative solutions on the way, but of course a lot more should be done. So it's still kind of a niche development. Yeah, and here is, for example, a website where you can compute your greenhouse gas emissions with for your machine learning solution. One of the next points is robustness. This might surprise many of you who are not really into the field. So this is a deep learning. This is an example from a deep learning system, which was about to detect animals. And this is a very famous panda. So he is usually cited in this case. So in this picture, the panda is recognized with a certain confidence of close to 60%. And then we add a bit of noise. So if we look at the picture, then for us, we don't even see the noise. Looks exactly like the initial panda, but for the deep learning system, I have to go a bit on the side. For the deep learning system, it's now a given. So that's not very robust. So for a minimal change in the input, we might get a totally different output. This is, of course, also an ongoing research problem to improve this.
Ursula, may I jump in here? Can you go back, please? What do you mean by noise?
This is called noise. So there are small color values which are added. I mean, every picture consists of pixels. And here we have another picture of differently colored pixels. And we add these two color values together.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the result. So here is the equal. It's like a mathematical equation. So it's this picture plus 0.007 times that. It's really, the color value is it's close to white almost. So, but then we would not see it here. That's why here we have this scaling. And then this is the resulting picture with these additional colors. And we don't see the colors here anymore. But for the deep learning system, that's too much. So it says this is a gibbon. It's a monkey. It's not a panda bear anymore. And this kind of illustrates how sensitive these systems are. You have a slightly different picture or other input. And then you have a totally different output and even wrong output. Not only different, but also very wrong output. And this happens also, I mean, this happens also if you have a HR solution, then there might be two people with almost identical CVs maybe, and just little thing is different. And then, yeah, you might not apply, you might not be considered for a job anymore. Can be a comma somewhere. Can be also very ridiculous things. Maybe you have a comma in your CV which disturbs the system. Yeah, security and safety is something we know from most other softwares already. I mean, banking, online banking has also very high security demands. And with AI we just add another, and yeah, we kind of open another door for attacks, because we can also attack this AI system. We can kind of from outside influence it in a way that it behaves as we want. I think there was this Twitter bot which has been trained in a couple of hours to really behave in a very racist and sexist way, and Twitter had to remove it again. And safety is more than on the, let's say, machine side. So if AI steers like wind parks or other machines, then, and this is kind of hacked, then it can really also lead to bodily harm or really bigger problems, which we also like to avoid. And
Ursula?
Yeah.
I think Alexandra would like to jump in here. Alexandra, would you like to take over and ask your question?
Please.
Alexandra, are you still here?
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, I was just actually typing in the chat that my questions can be saved till the end, because I'm not that good in raising my hand and asking them at the proper moment. And yeah, I didn't want to disturb you while, during your presentation, but yeah, I just collected some points which I would like to get more details about. So I just maybe start with the first question. You mentioned that 50% of AI projects are successful. So maybe you can just give us a couple of examples of cases where AI did a great job, was ethical, technically applicable, and the business case was successful, just for our understanding.
Yeah. So I think where it works quite well is, for example, in very specific medical diagnosis, if it supports the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So in some aspects, the machine learning detects cancer better, but not in a fully automated way. Just if it's really made together with the doctor, such that it supports the doctor in the right way. I think that is something which is working. Then a lot of classification. So in image processing, it's also quite good. So object detection in pictures, for example, it works quite well. Yeah, good. This is more or less the same example. So everything with pictures, it is quite good. Also, what works very well are recommender systems. So, like if you shop at Amazon, and then you get similar books or whatever tools or devices suggested. So this is another example. Yeah, it's a question how ethical Amazon is, but it works from a technical perspective. At least it works quite well. And also, for example, for businesses to do a trend analysis. This is also something, customer segmentation, for example, where you classify your customers in certain groups, and then you can kind of specifically do some specific marketing. That is also something which works quite well, for example.
Thank you, Ursula. And for all of us, Ursula will highlight some of the problems she's solving with her solutions later in this presentation. Ursula, I think you can go ahead with your presentation.
That's really also something I can share more at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, solutions. Okay, so security. So we have the security aspect. As I said, security is something that this is not new. So usually software engineers are aware of this, and now we have to just include the additional security problems which AI provides. And this is, as usual, an arms race. You know, you have always the hackers. So I also worked in security for some time. You always have to think, how can you hack the system yourself? And then you kind of prevent it, but then attackers come and they find a new way, and you have to close the door again and so on. And for the safety, it's of course really risk management, which helps to prevent harm. So, and then we come to another very funny aspect, actually. This is like if you have small machine learning models, then you can kind of understand quite nicely how they came up with a result. But if you have these very big deep learning models, you don't know actually why they come to a certain result. And you also, it's very hard to figure out whether this result is wrong or whether this is correct. And so here you see the classical machine learning system. It's like training data, machine learning, and then you have the user here, and the user has a lot of questions. Why did you do that? Why not something else? Why do you succeed? When do you fail? When can I trust you? And how do I correct an error? And this actually, basically 2018, a totally new research field started. It's called explainable AI. So there are a lot of additional mathematical models which you can run together with your deep learning or after your deep learning system to figure out how good this result is and why this result has been created by the machine learning model. It's not trivial. It's still, some stuff is very opaque, actually. But together with this additional mathematics, it provides you with insights into the deep learning system, how this actually functions and what it does. And then in a second step, so I mean, this is more of, this helps the data scientist, but not really the end user. So it's always very important to provide an explanation interface where also the end user is then informed why certain things have happened, why certain results have been provided, why not a different result, what would have happened if I have changed a certain thing, and this helps kind of to also to generate trust and more usability. It's a very important feature. It's kind of almost standard, even if it's not AI solution which is for a social application, but also in a technical, if you want to steer a wind park, you also want to know why the machine did certain actions or not. Then explainability is also kind of aligned with transparency. So customers really want to know what's going on. And this depends, of course, if you are in a very secure, if you do this for online banking, then you have to be a bit less transparent. But the more information you provide for a customer, like the data set, the details of the AI model, like whatever is necessary to understand what the AI system does, the more happy they are usually, and the more they trust also your solution. Then it's very important also is the term accountability, because especially, for example, with self-driving cars, certain people then claim that actually the car is intelligent and conscious, and it's kind of a own person. And then it's also, if the car crashes and kills people, it's the self-driving, that's the fault of the self-driving car and not of the developer. This is what we call a responsibility flight. And that's, of course, in many ethic frameworks is a special emphasis given on that. Really, it has to be very clear which humans are responsible or accountable for what in the development of these systems. And the last part is, of course, the privacy, but we have already GDPR in Europe, and also in Switzerland there is this new revised Datenschutzgesetz, which will be enforced soon. And this also is related to AI, because AI might also process sensitive data and might even produce sensitive data. So this needs to be always considered in an AI project as well. And then I mentioned this already, we have bias in the solution. So we have bias, we have human bias, we have bias in data, we have bias in algorithms and models, but we have also some mathematical algorithms which help us to balance this or to mitigate it or to remove bias to a certain sense. And it's also important to avoid bias from the very beginning on. It's always not that easy. It depends very much. There are certain situations where it's almost impossible to actually clean this thing up, but there are also situations where it's possible. And this is, of course, important to prevent the bias and mitigate bias, to have a fair solution. And AI must really support inclusion, diversity, equality, and justice. And this is mostly done in actually removing bias or taking this into consideration. So yeah, we have a lot of, I have to move a bit here. We have more than 21 fairness matrices at the moment. So it's also not, again, a clear answer, but we can kind of, depending on our solution, pick the right ones and try to develop our solution such that these fairness matrices are fulfilled. So how do we develop this? So usually, it's also good to, so it needs to be integrated in every development step. And usually we go from the ideation phase, the project scoping, business case, to design, development, deployment, and evaluation and production. And then, of course, we also have the end of life phase, which we have to consider.
Ursula, I just jump in again. We have another 10 minutes for you, but I see we have maybe we have two hands. Who is the first one? Is that spelled right? Ilaida. She, maybe if you have a short question, or what I would suggest, Ursula, maybe you come to the practical examples and then we go to the questions, because they are all related to. Can you give us some practical examples of fairness metrics, for example?
Oh, this is a bit complicated. So there are
okay, then I think
graphic equality, you know, so it depends where, yeah.
Go to, I think it would be good if you could give some examples, and then at the end we go to the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, Marisa likes complicated questions, I see. So concerning the fairness matrices, for example, if we have a AI system which kind of where there are women and men, and we want that they, so for example, you can do it, you can train the system such that there is the same, the AI model performs with the same accuracy for both gender, or that they are weighted like the same, so they have equal opportunity. I'm not sure whether this helps. So it depends what aspect of fairness you want to emphasize. Same accuracy, same opportunity, equality. Yeah, and if you have not only men or women, it gets even more complicated. And yeah, I think I will leave it here. If more questions are coming, then I go into more details. But it's a bit too technical for that level of presentation. I have to admit, I would need to explain a bit more. Actually, I prefer if you talk to me, then I don't have to read these questions. It's taking time. What is the next? What was the other question?
No, I think, Ursula, I think is what I would suggest is maybe you come kind to your practical slides and so your examples, and then we go at the end, and then we will directly, and you don't need to read the questions. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just moving forward with the development here, and I don't have direct, I don't know what you mean exactly with direct examples. So I'm just moving forward with the presentation. And
yes, please.
We can do this at the end. So I just said that so ethics has to be included in the entire life cycle. And it's very important to consider in the ideation stage. There is really the point where you want to consider which values do we want to emphasize in the long term with our solution. Which human, social, economical, ecological, or other values do we want to support with our AI technology? And at this point, it's also interesting already how to map these to KPIs and to generate return of investment, or what's also very helpful is return on experience, because it's very helpful, especially if you have an AI system which works with end users, like a recommendation system, to really shape this so that the user is happy and interacts very often with the system. And I already mentioned some of these values. You can, of course, choose also other values. This is then up to you, but this is the point where you kind of make sure which values you would like to realize. And then, of course, also the point to figure out how they can be realized technically. And in the design phase, we have to kind of also see that values differ a bit depending on the field of application and cultural context, and they have to be also easily explained for all stakeholder groups. And there is this approach I'm using here is from the Bertelsmann Stiftung. It's called VCIO approach. So the values we introduced, we then define criteria and indicators such that we can kind of quantify them as observables. So that's very important. We need to really be able to quantify and compare the values we would like to realize. It's also important for the monitoring part. And now we can have conflicting values. So that's also important to address this already at this stage. For example, security and transparency. If you have an online banking solution, then it might be not such a good idea if you make everything around your algorithm really public, because then it's quite clear that it's pretty quickly attacked. So that's important that you introduce a good hierarchization of values. It's either a bottom-up approach that you start from the point of potential danger, or you just say, okay, for us, like in the online banking application, it's clear that security has to be rated higher than transparency, at least in certain aspects. We make a short example how this looks. So we use transparency, disclosing data, disclosing AI model details, and also I take explainability and interpretability within this example. Usually I prefer to keep this separate, but it's nicer to explain this here. So it would look like this. We have the value transparency, which we would like to support with our AI solution. And as criteria, we identified disclosure of the data set. And here we interpretability and explainability of the algorithm. Then we have the indicators documentation here, for example, and we quantify it in 3 steps. So we have comprehensive logging and version control of all data. This would be the best. Let's give it 3 points. Version control by a third party would be 2 points, and no documentation. This would be it would be 2, 1, and 0 points would be better. So you can quantify now this particular part of your value. And then public access to the data, full disclosure, disclosure by differential privacy, or no access. It's again the same, 2, 1, or 0 points. And the same you can do now for these interpretability or explainability models. Is the model itself interpretable, fully, partially, or no? Then you can give points again. And the same, do you have a suitable explainable method available, which explains your non-interpretable AI model? And in this way, you have a very nice and clear overview. So you can also show this to all the stakeholders. It's nicely understandable. And you have a quantification at the very end, which is very important also to understand what's going on in your system. And then you can kind of summarize all these points and introduce a rating for your value. Here A would be the best, and E would be more or less 0 points would be the worst. And again, this is a nice overview. I think the Bertelsmann Stiftung also tries to get an ethics label on that. This is maybe a bit too much from my perspective, but for like internal visualization, I think that is really very helpful. So now we did the entire design already in a value-based way. So we can basically start developing based on that. And here it's the important point that we actually implement metrics and monitor from the very beginning on how well we actually fulfill these values. And this also supports then our debugging, and we can right away, so we have right away an ethical solution. And then if we move to production, it's of course even more important, because now the customers also, the users interact with the system, that we continue monitoring. We even have different matrices now, which we evaluate, and we constantly kind of check out how good we're doing, and then also putting this feedback again into our solution. At this place, it might also be good to do some auditing. There are audit approaches developed. I'm not sure, I don't think there is already something really out, but this will come soon. And it also helps to provide information to basically everyone. And also it's a good stage to collect feedback from users or vendors. And the last phase is end of life. So usually this is also a phase. If we have a bigger system, which we cannot just remove from one day on the other, it's very important. It's like with the security aspect. So we might not provide any new developments anymore, but we have to make sure that all our ethical things are still corrected and updated and monitored in this end of life phase until it's really then taken out. Should we stop again and do questions, or this is?
Ursula, I think you have another 5 minutes when you can finish, and then we have some questions. I would like to have these questions then also.
I'm almost done. Just a couple of things. So this can be also taken up on a corporate level. So what I described would be done on a project basis, and you have to introduce, of course, a kind of a governance or ethics board, or kind of extend your existing boards you have to align your overall strategy with this ethical AI strategy. And there are several possibilities of having even an external board or hierarchical internal boards. So like, I think I remember it's IKEA who has these hierarchical system. So basically there is no unique solution. So every company tries to do what fits best. And yeah, so they are then responsible to make an overall framework where for every individual project, you can really have your set of values which make sense. And you can also ensure that ethical standards are met throughout the corporate world. And a very important aspect also is education, because most people are lacking a general understanding of AI and ethics as well. So that's really important throughout the ranks, management, tech, hiring, marketing, that they have a suitable know-how about AI and ethics and how to use it in a safe way. Yeah, then most especially in the big tech world, there are ethics boards, some very short-lived. So it's really important that there is not only this internal development, but also some external control. So we need really auditing coming and regulation coming a bit sooner than later. This should be, of course, in a considered way. Over-regulation also stops the progress, but it has to be really a good balance. And I mean, we have already GDPR, AI regulations. The EU AI regulations are enforced in 2024. So there's development going on in the EU. Also in Switzerland, we have a revised Datenschutzgesetz, and there's also a group who works on AI laws, which should come up sooner or later. And yeah, there are also independent AI audits developed. So such it's also easier for companies actually to make sure that they are on the right track. However, if they start to think ethically in the way I already introduced, it's kind of almost, it's very kind of easy or much easier also to comply than with the regulation and audits. And just a few sentences also to AI ethics as a business case. If ethics is considered from the very beginning, you can really avoid a lot of problems like that you have to really stop your solution or you have to restart again because after 3 years you recognize, oh, there's so much bias. You also avoid lawsuits. And for the customers, it's just much more trustworthy and they are really much more happy to use it. There are really a lot of studies and surveys which prove that if a ethical solution would be available, they would use that one. And it's helpful to introduce respective metrics from the very beginning on and align this with the ethical development. So you can also see where the return of investment comes. Yeah, so with this.
Wow. Ursula, thank you so much. I think we do have a lot of questions, and you see what you all see, Ursula is really an expert, and an expert loves the babies, and they talk about it like, you know, for a lot of us, there were maybe a lot of questions here, and I think the first one who has raised her hand for almost half an hour now, I do hope that I spell it rightly. I think it's from Turkey. Elida, would you please ask your question now? And maybe you can stop sharing.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, but raise your question. Yes, wonderful, thank you.
Firstly, I want to thank you for this nice presentation. It was very explanative. So it was very beneficial for all of us, I think. And I want to ask you for your opinion about explainability and also the accountability, because they are supportive for each other. And some people say that it is not really possible to create 100% explainable AI, because AI learns with data through experience, and even engineers cannot track why AI decide on this topic like this. So when engineers cannot control these decisions, it is not easy to decide who is accountable for the decision. So I want to ask you whether it is really possible to reach the 100% explainable AI, or it is not really possible in theory.
No, it's not possible, not at all. And I don't think it will ever be possible, but still I think the developer should be responsible. It should be accountable. I mean, none of our technical developments are 100% in whatever way, you know. So sorry, if you do make a car, then I don't know, usually you have a certain statistic which are faulty or broken, and an accident might happen, and you cannot prevent this. You can just, you can do something and you can put effort into this and you can get better, but this will not be 100% explainable. Except you have a very trivial, if you have a very trivial, there are very little methods like a linear regression with 2 parameters, yeah, then it's exactly, but not a big deep learning system.
Then it will be very difficult to decide who is accountable for this, whether firm is accountable or the employee is accountable, right? Then
why?
Because if we should be able to decide whether employee or firm is able to control this, whether they could have foreseen this. But if
they make it and they know that it has this risk and they sell it anyway, they still have to account for this risk. If you go skiing, you might also not know whether you have a severe accident, but your insurance still has to pay.
Yeah, in law, there are some differentiation between the liability. Therefore, if we decide on these areas, then we differentiate the liability form of the firm or the employee. Therefore, it is very important whether they could foresee this or not.
I mean, they can foresee, but they cannot explain it to 100%. Yeah. This is what they can foresee.
And also, I think, and to jump in here, it's also always kind of, you know, how to justify this on a legal level. And I think we shouldn't go more into this, and I don't want to be unfriendly here. However, I see that our guest from Hungary, and I'm absolutely horrible with names, but you jumped in, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Emese. This is a very typical Hungarian name, and it's very difficult just to pronounce it. So thank you so much, Ursula, for your very interesting and wonderful presentation. I'm a clinician and coming from the medical part, and my question is also a little bit about the reliability and the usefulness of those softwares which are based on the AI, but using in the clinic, in the clinical part. What do you think about this? Is it useful in establishing diagnosis or not? You know, just I mean, I'm thinking about the percentage of the usefulness. So this is it. This is my question. And also, what about the future? What do you think about this?
I think that if these systems, I mean, I talked a little bit about it, especially in the imaging. So imaging usually works quite well. And if this is done in a way that it really supports the doctor, so really in collaboration with medical personnel, so that they can also say, here it really supports me, and here it's misleading me, and so on. So if this really works in this collaboration, then I think this might be helpful. Sometimes I have the impression that many startups, they kind of work out these systems by themselves, and then they try to sell them to doctors, and then they say no.
Okay, so, yeah.
I mean, I was also in medical projects, and there are doctors who are very open, but there are only very few of them. And other doctors, they just really kind of are also not interested in collaborating in such a endeavor.
Sure.
So it has to be really, it's complicated. I mean, there's so many things you can diagnose. I mean, it's such a broad field. And I mentioned, you know, you have to develop your machine learning for a very narrow, specific situation then. So I cannot speak for everything, but I think they are very promising. situations, but there's also a lot where it might not work.
And again, I jump in here. As of Friday, we will have available on our website a tool where you can schedule a one-on-one call with Ursula. You will get all the information next week. So if you want to get into more detail, Ursula is here for mentoring and coaching, and you can book her. You can book Ursula 30 minutes for free as a member of Role Model Rebels. Yes, and look, Marisa, what she is, her reaction is. And to be quite fair here to all of us, there were some questions already raised before. I would like to address them. Marisa was one of them. Marisa, maybe you said you like complicated questions. You raised your question, but I would also like to just like close the call within the next 10 minutes. But Marisa, up to you if you want to raise your question again.
I'm gonna just try it. Let me just raise it, but you don't have to answer it. So maybe we can then, discuss afterwards or so. But I was really intrigued because it seemed to me that you were not overly impressed with external ethical labels in the whole labeling industry. And I think this is if I'm wrong, please correct me. And I was pretty intrigued by the idea. So it actually seemed that, the whole label industry is adding another proxy between the user and the company. And apart from all the, internal security and IP issues, I was wondering if it wouldn't actually make sense to only have internal, like consultants, not internal ethics boards only, but also always have external consultants and stuff like that. It's like people who are external, but who review them internally.
Yeah,
for all the reasons mentioned, from IP to blah, blah, blah. However, I'm also very aware of the whole big, huge
I mean, so what I think is really important is independent audit, and it has to be really independent, so external. And if there is a good external label, I mean, the audit is too complicated then for the end user, basically. So this is more between then governance, legal, and so, yeah, it's a good point. So I think in general, it's a bit two-sided. So I think it's nice, and it has to be simple then, of course, also if it's kind of communicated to the general user buyer. But at the moment, what I see, it's very fragmented. So there is in Switzerland, I don't know how many groups which try already to provide a label, and many are not very transparent. I mean, they kind of they make you transparent. They have themselves not very transparent. So if we manage, if there is an EU label, for example, I mean, it should be then really one or a few broadly applied, and they should be also transparent what they check, because at the moment I have also the feeling that, I mean, they check this aspect and they check that aspect and they check this aspect, so it's just not good enough yet. But in general, if there is a really independent and one or two general labels which are transparent, so it's clear what they check, then yes, I think it's a very good proxy between the end user and a vendor, and it helps also to yeah.
The current label industry, you seem to be rather critical, or not a little.
I think it needs more development.
Yeah,
it's a bit too initial at the moment, so too little efforts, or not far enough. So yeah, but in general, I think it's needed and it's helpful. And this label I actually showed, it is also inspired by the sustainability label for cars. So that's, I think, also quite nice to have something which we already use. So it's kind of, yeah. But I think it's a bit too initial, everything, but it needs further development. They have to become more general and so on.
Thank you very, very much, Ursula. What I do now, and it is in the chat, so this will be the tool. This will be available next week. And there were one or two more questions, but to be quite honest, we have already 5 minutes overrun. I personally would like to stop. However, is there any question that Ursula should answer in this call? Then please raise your hands. We can see it. And otherwise, again, we do have this. You have one question, Marisa. And I would otherwise suggest you book Ursula and then you exchange. And but maybe Marisa, you can ask this last question.
No, don't worry.
I would say for today, Ursula, first of all, thank you very, very much. Ursula will be available for other projects as well. We have a lot of partners with Role Model Rebels, but also role models and mentees who are developing their own business. And Ursula is here as an expert. She has her own company. She's also a professor at the university. Lecturer. Yeah, to me, you're a professor. Doesn't matter. So you see. So I would personally say thank you very, very much, Ursula, for this really wonderful masterclass. Andrea, is there anything to add from your side?
No, just to thank Ursula as well for the great presentation. And also, if you didn't get your questions answered, definitely reach out. You're all members, so you can reach out via the chat on site as well. So when you're signed in onto the site on Role Model Rebels, you can chat to anyone on there. And like Petra said, the mentoring sessions are available as of next week. So enjoy that too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Ursula. And again, you can also directly approach Ursula on our website with the chat function. Everyone else to Turkey, Hungary, Betty, where are you from? I don't know, Liga, I don't know, it's France, Zurich, London, Bristol. Thank you, everyone, very, very much. And I would say goodbye for today and see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Ursula. I'll get back to you within the next days, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Danke, Ursula. Danke, war echt super. Danke.
Danke auch.
So, Andrea, willst du noch bleiben oder ist sie schon gegangen? Ah, ist schon gegangen. Okay. Okay, bye-bye.